The oracle ceremony marked a rite of passage, a coming-of-age ritual where youths who had turned 15 were granted unique abilities. Everyone awaited this important moment with anticipation, each one hoping to receive the finest of gifts. Young actor Glenrid was nearing his big moment in Falsford's capital. As his father accompanied him, he recalled their aristocratic family's long line of attribute mages, and Hector wistfully watched the scenery from the carriage. He promised his strict father, Margrave Wren Glenrud, Lord of Falsford's southern lands, not to betray his expectations and to excel, as Glenrud always got his way and expected no less from his son. In truth, there was an immense array of magical abilities, ranging from healing to talent in trade to the enhancement of physical strength. In addition, children from aristocratic families possess distinctive preferences when it comes to the skills and qualities they choose to pursue. For aristocrats, mastering the three elements, fire, water, and wind, is of utmost importance, as these magical attributes prove to be the most effective in combat situations. Many arduous trials awaited those who sought these skills, as strength alone was not enough. Yet Hector, fueled by faith in his noble Glenreid blood, passionately yearned to master one of these mighty elements as a mage. The oracle's ceremony peaked as the High Magister declared Hector had a rare attribute. Meanwhile, the Glenreid heir waited impatiently for the result, but the Magister kept delaying the announcement. The Magister declared Ektar had the Earth attribute, angering Rand Glenrid, who demanded a retest. The Magister reminded him it was pointless, as the outcome was final and would not change with repetition. The anxious father, proud of his family's reputation for children with all three essential qualities, could not accept his third son, the actor, failing. When Hector tried to calm him, the Margrave struck him, refusing any disgrace to their lineage. San Lad felt not only the sting of physical pain, but also the weight of humiliation, while his father continued to accuse and belittle him. Deld, the eldest Glenreid's son, said Hector's control of earth and stone was too draining to be practical, making him useless in combat. Glenreid agreed, adding their father's disappointment was justified, given Hector's poor attribute. The brothers quickly belittled Hector, claiming his disgrace shamed the family. Awaiting his father's verdict on punishment, Hector was meanwhile banned from even sitting at the family table. Hector found himself in an extremely unpleasant predicament. He couldn't fathom why those around him had suddenly begun to despise him, avoiding his company and remarking that he reeked of earth. The director was inconsolable over his predicament, for he had long dreamed of possessing the attribute of wind. Soon after, following his father's orders, he was placed under house arrest, where he remained for half a year. However, once the period of house arrest had ended, the father made the irrevocable decision to banish Hector from the family forever. The father appointed Hector as the ruler of the village of Boda, situated on the western edge of his vast domains. The Margrave, wanting to humble his youngest son, stripped him of real family status, barred him from the ancestral home, and decreed Hector would serve only as a common free man, entitled to nothing more. It became clear to Zima that the village of Boda lay in a barren land, surrounded by vast, untouched forests. These territories were home to countless formidable creatures, many of which posed extraordinary danger. Ekor realized his father had sent him to this remote land not just to exile him, but to ensure his death, since the aristocrats couldn't kill him outright due to his status. From now on, he'd have to rely only on himself to survive. Hector set out with Squamander, leader of the assault squads, and half-dwarf Oram, Earth Mage. Though the swordswoman disliked the mission and journey, Aurum reminded them even ordinary guards were promised 10,000 gold coins. Among the guards was also a half-elf named Sifa, a masterful archer who remained entirely unconcerned by the task at hand. Among the team was Nora, a half-giant and the group's shield maiden. This band of adventurers was renowned for their strength, as every member held the rank of B. Within the team, the responsibility for magic fell to Dorian, the fire mage. What astonished them most was the reward they had been promised, an extraordinary sum of 10,000 gold coins, while an ordinary person could survive for a month on just 2. Victor was unexpectedly bequeathed an entire treasury of gold coins by his father. The boy was taken aback, for despite all his hatred, the Margrave had proven to be surprisingly generous. Hector, having saved secret funds and received generous donations from his brothers, had no financial worries. Growing weary of the cramped carriage, he asked Amanda how much longer until they reached their destination. Amanda reminded him not to address her so casually, as she only spoke with men of worthy skills. Hector realized, with some resignation, that she would keep reminding him of this repeatedly. It turned out to be much simpler than anticipated. He informed them that it would take about another half a month to reach Lodia Silo. Amanda immediately reminded the half-dwarf not to speak with the man they were escorting unless given permission. He explained to Hector that Amanda had been far too harsh and needed to learn how to interact with others. Suddenly, Nora noticed something unusual ahead and hastily warned the entire team. Up ahead, a gang of thieves appeared, having already robbed someone. Realizing that at such a distance they would soon be spotted, Amanda ordered her team to launch an immediate attack. Meanwhile, Amanda instructed Hector to remain outside the carriage while they carried out the true task for which they were being paid. Nevertheless, Hector hurried after the adventurers, declaring that he had a plan. Amanda retorted that the situation hardly required the aid of an earth mage and ordered Hector to return to the carriage at once. Hector explained that his lineage had granted him a considerable reserve of magical power, and he was determined to prove that even with the earth attribute, he was capable of great accomplishments. Amanda declared loudly that Hector was free to do as he pleased and she did not care, but she had no desire to bear responsibility for his actions. In response, the young man assured her that he was willing to take full responsibility himself. Eta recalled being 10 years old and stricken with a mysterious high fever. It was during that illness that memories of his previous life as a Japanese man from the 21st century returned to him. Hector realized his 6 months of daily training had led to this moment, during which he developed earth magic techniques so unique that no one in this world had ever imagined them. All that remained was to test their skills on the bandits, who, undeterred by the adventurers' presence, rallied and attacked. Hector realized it was time to act. A powerful surge of magical energy formed a net across the ground, effortlessly scattering the first group of bandits. Following his initial success, Hector employed the earthen net to press his attack further. The earth began to crack open at once, fissures racing toward the mounted bandits with terrifying speed. Panic gripped both men and horses alike. The animals, unable to maintain their footing, hastily threw their riders to the ground. They detected the enemy's interference. The sudden turn of events prompted Amanda and her squad to launch an immediate assault on the bandits. Without wasting a moment, Amanda charged forward to launch the attack. Her enormous sword became an instrument of justice as she swiftly overwhelmed several bandits. The unexpected strength of the mighty half-giantess, Nora broke through the enemy's defenses, securing victory with swift blows from her formidable shield and leaving the astonished bandits with no chance to resist. Hector watched the battle with admiration, proud to have such skilled companions by his side. Even young Aurum did not stand aside. He bravely hurled himself at the enemy in a fierce assault. The half-elf Seifer loosed 3 arrows in rapid succession, each finding its mark and swiftly thinning the ranks of the bandits. The formidable strength of a B-rank team was truly a sight to behold. The sorceress of fire magic unleashed blazing spheres before her, reducing anyone she noticed to ashes, leaving them no chance of salvation. During battle, Ektar used magic to capture several foes, while Aurum reported the rest had scattered and the gang was neutralized. The captured bandits, terrified by the adventurer's power, desperately begged for mercy. The half-dwarf Orm suggested leaving the prisoners bound, reasoning that when night fell, monsters would emerge and devour them alive. In his view, such a fate would be a fitting punishment for villains like these. The group desperately pleaded for mercy, insisting they didn't want to be prey for demonic beasts. Hector, however, said he couldn't help and had no intention of interfering with the adventurer's choices. Amanda the adventurer recognized Hector's remarkable magic and invaluable help, declaring him an honorary party friend. The exiled aristocrat's son was surprised by this recognition and inspired with newfound motivation. Hector thanked Amanda, realizing that merely envisioning his desired outcome in his mind set his body into motion, causing his magical abilities to manifest on their own. He found it deeply gratifying to have his skills acknowledged by such renowned adventurers. Meanwhile, Alea had discovered people inside the wrecked wagons and relayed the news to Amanda. Among the survivors was an albedo merchant who'd traded in the Grand Capital. Hector was relieved he and his group were safe and said they were headed to Boda, surprising the merchant, who pondered how to deliver his cargo as his wagon faltered. Albedo, showing resourcefulness, asked for help getting himself and his luggage to the nearest town, offering payment. Hector agreed, viewing it as a chance to expand his own journey by aiding the stranded merchant. The Earth Mage suggested Amanda bring the bandits for their reward, and the adventuring party leader agreed. Suddenly, another rescued passenger appeared, a girl named Rin, who had been hiding in the wagon until the danger passed. Albedo explained that Rin was his assistant and servant, so he asked for her to join them. The adventurers, captivated by her, agreed she shouldn't be left in the forest, and Hector also couldn't abandon her. The actor greeted them, expressing his pleasure at making Rin's acquaintance. At the same moment, the noble youth carefully removed a feather that had become entangled in the slave girl's hair, an action that unsettled her. However, the slave girl, frightened, hid behind her master's back, causing Hector some unease, for he had hoped to exchange a few words with the charming young woman. The cart rattled down the rutted road, as Albedo's curiosity prompted him to ask why Hector traveled so far to remote Boda near the western border. Hector, guarding his secrets, merely said he acted on Margrave Glenred's orders. The actor proclaimed with pride that it was a great honor for him to become the lord of the village of Boda. Hearing this, Albedo could not suppress his laughter and called the young man a promising ruler. The merchant shared rumors that in addition to magical creatures, dragons were said to inhabit these lands. It was the first time Hector had heard of dragons, and he was deeply astonished, recognizing the clear danger they posed. Hector found dragons astonishing, having known them only from fairy tales. While their appearance piqued his curiosity, it was Alberto's sudden, wholehearted fascination that unexpectedly delighted him. The merchant quickly befriended Hector and asked to visit Boda every 3 months, saying Hector's presence made all feel safe. Surprised but touched by Alberto's offer, Hector accepted, seeing their friendship as a fine start to his story. Hector's carriage soon brought the merchant and his maid Rin to the nearest city. As the adventurers turned in the captured bandits, Ektar and Albedo were already discussing the remarkable rescue in earnest. When Amanda returned, she gave Ektar his generous share of the bandit reward, which pleasantly surprised him. Albedo also offered a reward for saving him, but Ektar said he had enough and told the merchant not to bother. Albedo chose to present Rin as a reward, noting her literacy, math, and household skills, making her ideal for Hector. Rin blushed at his decision, but surprisingly felt no resentment, and Albedo saw her affection for Hector. The merchant touched the girl's hand and tore up the contract, releasing Rena from bondage. Albedo suggested that Hector could make a new contract with Rena, should he so desire. However, the young master remarked that now, with Rena a free woman, he had no need for a servant and did not wish to enter into any contract. Hector then asked whether Rena herself was willing to accompany him to the village of Boa. The young woman was deeply moved by his kindness and confessed that if Hector did not object, she wished to live on his land under his protection. Rena expressed her gratitude to Hector for granting her freedom and saving her life in the forest. Overcome with emotion, Rena exclaimed her desire to remain by Hector's side forever. The young Earth Mage rejoiced at his new companion and expressed heartfelt gratitude to Albedo. All that remained for them was to continue their journey and at last reach their new home. Time on the road passed much more swiftly, and soon half a month had slipped by since Hector had left the capital of the kingdom, the city of Grand. As the young lord's carriage neared Boda, stopping in small towns along the way, the growingly suspicious road prompted Amanda to release a subtle, invisible aura to scout for any hidden dangers ahead. Excitedly, Orom turned back and reported the terrible events unfolding in the village of Botha. At that very moment, it seemed, a ferocious band of orcs had launched an attack on the modest community. He was told many orcs surrounded the settlement, and its fence would soon fail. Magic scholars said orcs are D-level monsters, far too strong for ordinary people to defeat. Worried, Nora asked what to do. Before Amanda replied, Hector insisted they go to the village immediately to fight the orcs and save everyone. But Amanda stopped his noble impulse. Amanda made it clear the team's only job was to escort Hector to the village. No extra pay for fighting orcs, so no risks. Realizing she was right, Hector decided to offer the adventurers extra incentive. The young lord promised a gold coin per slain orc and declared the hunt open. The adventurers agreed to eliminate all orcs, while Hector asked Rin to stay in the carriage, assuring her he'd return once it was safe. Meanwhile, the villagers fought desperately to hold back the onslaught of raging orcs, with the OG leader commanding the defense. The situation was dire. Everyone knew the odds were uneven, and the gates could give way at any moment. At the height of the tension, a band of courageous adventurers, accompanied by the young Hector, suddenly launched a surprise attack on the orcs from the rear. The brave adventurers launched an unexpected assault on the orcs, determined to rid the land of these dreadful creatures. The local inhabitants, astonished by this sudden help, could not hide their joy as the first orcs fell lifeless to the ground. Once more, the young Earth Mage summoned his powers, unleashing a massive wall of soil upon the treacherous invaders, leaving them little hope of escape. The actor concluded that for an ordinary Earth Mage, such a powerful magical feat was likely the very limit of his abilities. Yet the actor possessed immense magical power, and conjuring such formidable spells was no challenge for him. Though countless orcs surrounded him, he began hurling massive stones at them, each one instantly claiming a life. The Earth Mage did not restrict himself to offensive spells alone. He skillfully combined them with expert swordsmanship. Determined Amanda was astonished by the actor's skills, having thought him only an Earth Mage, but he explained he was an aristocrat who mastered fencing with expert instructors specially hired by his father. Amanda simply asked Exter not to take too much of their spoils so that they could continue to live comfortably. In response, Exter promised not to wrong the adventurers and assured them of his generous gratitude. After the grueling battle, young Orom hurried over to Hector, eager to share his observations. The nimble half-dwarf gathered all 24 magical stones from the orcs. Amanda said this would earn the promised gold coins and told the actor to keep them, as the crystals stored monster magic and could be traded for profit. Ecto kept half the magical stones, giving the rest to Amanda and her team as a reward for their help in battle. Amanda, pleased with the unexpected reward, remembered how their initial suspicion of Ecto had quickly faded. Village Elder OG thanked the adventurer for helping repel the orc attack. The visitor introduced himself as Boda's new head, appointed by Margaret Glenred, leaving Elder OG astonished and deep in thought. To persuade the local elder, Hector handed him a letter containing orders from his father. It was sealed with the crest of the Glenrod family, which the elder recognized at once. After reading the Margrave's letter, OG told the villagers they had a new master who had saved them. The grateful peasants rejoiced, but OG said thanks weren't needed. Still, Hector vowed to turn the village into a true town. The village head offered a brief tour, which Hector accepted. Every house was dilapidated, the fields long dead, and the haggard villagers made the reality even worse than the young lord had feared. Hector realized that an immense task lay before him, to transform this village into an ordinary settlement. The elder apologized that no inns existed in the village for the young nobleman, but Hector reassured him, saying it didn't matter, as he'd soon have plenty of open land at his disposal. OG offered Hector a suitable plot, which he approved. The landowner planned to build a house if it caused no inconvenience. The village elder had no objections and gave Hector permission to use the land as he wished. Using earth magic, the young lord conjured countless bricks to build a magnificent house, more beautiful and well-crafted than the villagers' homes, which gave Hector a quiet sense of satisfaction. It took just 15 minutes to create this magnificent building, yet it inspired awe in everyone who laid eyes on it. This splendid and sturdy brick house stood out with striking distinctiveness, commanding attention against the backdrop of its surroundings. The adventurers rushed to see the striking new structure, but inside, it was plain. Hector said magical furniture was difficult, so he'd furnish it differently. Impressed, Amanda asked if he could build a similar house for her team. The young Earth Mage told Amanda she planned to return to the capital after their escort mission, but the bold adventurer said Botha, ruled by a skilled lord and with no other adventurers, seemed far more appealing for their team. Amanda was greatly pleased by this idea, for it meant he was now recognized as the rightful ruler, and the presence of a team of seasoned adventurers would bring greater security to the village. Hector resolved to begin by constructing a house for Amanda and her team, after which he would work on upgrading all the buildings in the village. It was important to him to gradually transform this place into a comfortable home for its residents. The following day, wasting no time, Hector announced his intention to reconstruct all the buildings in the village. Orma's contributions proved invaluable, for she possessed the powers of an earth sorceress. The halfling girl excelled at constructing walls, laying floors, and handling other essential tasks with remarkable skill. All the walls surrounding the settlement were rebuilt from clay, while the gates were to be crafted from sturdy iron. Iron reserves were low, but there was plenty of ore. Hector used magic to purify and transform it, applying a unique method he'd devised himself, based on knowledge he once gained in Japan. In the end, the young lord used up all the iron that could be found in the village. After forging sturdy gates, Hector entrusted the remaining iron to a blacksmith named Birkin. After a long and exhausting day of work, Hector and Aurum decided to take a break and have lunch, for they had not found a single moment to eat until then. Rin greeted the young master at the door, announcing lunch was ready. Hector was surprised by her maid outfit, but she said it helped with chores. He reminded her she was free to choose now, as their contract had ended. Rin confessed her wish to stay with and care for Hector, offering to be his maid as the best solution. The young lord was surprised by her proposal, but Aurum promptly insisted they start dinner. However, before dinner, Hector wished to refresh himself after a day of hard work. Rin promised to quickly prepare a basin of hot water and a towel for him. However, Hector stopped the young woman and invited everyone to join him in the garden, where he had already devised something intriguing. Hector quickly picked a spot, prompting Aurum to ask if they were building another house. The Earth Mage remembered his plan needed geothermal springs, which weren't nearby, so he'd have to drill a well. Hector employed magical geological surveying to pinpoint the perfect location. Through the magic of Earth, Hector was able to examine the composition of the soil within the reach of his mystical power, delving as deep as 500 meters and meticulously analyzing every layer. Once he had found the right spot, the young mage resolved to dig a vast pit, line its walls with stone, and then descend beneath the earth. His next task was to create a deep subterranean chamber. Soon, a true geyser of hot water burst forth from the newly formed hole, and the girls watched in delight as an incredible natural bath appeared before them under the open sky. As Hector soaked in the hot bath, he felt his life steadily improving. True pleasure, he believed, was sinking into warm water, particularly when the bath itself was crafted by his own hands. As expected, Aurum joined the young Hector, delighted by the opportunity to immerse himself in the hot water. The Earth Mage felt somewhat awkward in the presence of the girl's frankness, yet chose not to argue. Forgetting all about the actor, Rin joined in the bathing, promising her master that she would help wash him, scrub his back, and soothe him with a calming massage. Soon, drawn by the scent of hot water, Amanda arrived as well. The adventurers asked Hector if he had decided to treat himself to a hot bath and had completely forgotten about his ciphers and weapons. Soon, the entire group joined the water festivities, irritating Hector, who felt they were uninvited. Ignoring his annoyance, everyone urged the Earth Mage to create a similar hot spring at their home. Hector's youthful spirit was overwhelmed, causing him to flee from the girls. As a result, a public bathhouse was built in Boda the next day, to the delight of local residents. After analyzing the local soil, the Hector determined that it would be impossible to grow any plants on this land, so poor in nutrients. OG recounted how they had tried enriching the soil with forest earth, yet this yielded no results. As a consequence, the village suffered from poor harvests year after year. 2 weeks after becoming lord, he saw that brave warriors had repelled the enemy. Homes were restored, and the water supply fixed. Now, he needed to tackle the issue of food shortages. The village elder said locals had only hunted weaker monsters, so meat was still scarce. Rin suggested training hunters, but Hector preferred Amanda's team handle it, so they decided to focus on the harvest until the adventurers returned. The young Earth Mage asked to open the rear gates and bring in forest soil. OG noted they'd tried this before, but the mage insisted on mixing soils. Following the lord, OG ordered the villagers to do as the mage requested. The young mage admired the masterfully crafted iron gates, once again taking pride in his village's renowned forges. The villagers then asked Aita how much forest land they would require. The wise lord explained that only a single cart would be needed, which surprised the boys who had already braced themselves for hard labor. Aita then clarified that his earth-enhancing magic was primarily intended to improve the soil. This magic enhances the fertility of the soil by channeling mystical energy. However, it will not work unless the earth contains enough nutrients. Therefore, it is essential to add a small amount of forest soil at the outset. Once the soil had been mixed, Hector called upon his magical abilities and after only a few minutes announced that everything was ready. Medmenoji was astonished by the incredible speed of the transformation. Local residents confirmed that the soil had become fertile and expressed their confidence that they would now be able to grow more vegetables than ever before. When her master was praised for his outstanding work, one of the actors remarked that he hoped he hadn't ruined anything. The village elder and residents gathered to thank the new master for reviving agriculture, but Hector noted it served his interests and urged teamwork. His message resonated, and the people kept honoring and thanking the young proprietor. Among the crowd, Hector spotted a silhouette that resembled an orc, and fear gripped him instantly. But soon after, a friendly laugh rang out. It turned out that the mysterious figures were none other than Aurum and Doreen. Disguised upon their return to the village, they had decided to play a trick on the young lord, and now delighted in the success of their mischievous scheme. Amanda shared that they had managed to hunt down 3 orcs and a massive boar. Thanks to this success, the villagers would now have a supply of fresh meat to last them for quite some time. Amanda vividly recounted the successful hunt in the perilous forest and insisted on a fair reward for the meat she had provided for the entire team. Hector quietly gave the man 4 gold coins. The collaboration quickly benefited both sides. The adventurers aided the village, and the delighted elder kept suggesting new ideas. Amanda was surprised when Hector offered to teach both local hunters and travelers, explaining villagers wanted revenge on forest monsters and more food. As a reward, he promised her all magical stones collected from the monsters. The computer realized the villagers needed food, not magic stones. Also, more skilled hunters trained by the adventurers would boost Mandas's profits and strengthen their collaboration. It hesitated only briefly before agreeing, for such an arrangement suited it well. The adventurer assured that he would spare no effort in teaching the hunters. Hector was pleased with Amanda's agreement and received from Rin a list of 45 strong candidates aged 14 to 30, then proposed splitting them into groups to train in archery, swordsmanship, and spear fighting. The half-elf Sifa surprised Hector with her determination, expressing her wish to instruct new recruits in both archery and swordsmanship, an enthusiasm he hadn't expected from someone usually so silent. She was an enchanting archer with a kind heart, and her gentle nature made her an ideal mentor. Hector approved the half-elf girl's candidacy without hesitation. Upon learning of Sephora's decision to become a mentor, Amanda was consumed with rage and immediately set out for the young lord's residence. Furious, she wrote she wouldn't fight, but would never let Sephora train newcomers. When Hector asked if she feared Sephora's beauty would distract the novices, Amanda retorted Hector knew nothing and warned him not to ignore her warning. The village farmer pondered Amanda's words and realized that he had only recently become acquainted with these travelers and thus knew far too little about them. The only thing Hector could say about the archer Sephora was that she was an incredibly beautiful and captivating young woman. What set this half-elf apart from all others was her stunningly beautiful hair, shimmering with the deep green of emeralds. Despite her striking appearance, Sephora revealed herself to be a remarkably kind-hearted and wise half-elf. This was the impression she made on Hector. In training, Seaford proved quite different. The formidable half-elf introduced herself as their mentor for 3 months, but throughout the lessons, she allowed the students to call her Mother. At first, the local boys thought the striking lady was joking, but Seaford felled a towering tree with one sweep, warning her training methods were unconventional. Fear replaced their amusement instantly. Seaford had transformed from a gentle girl into a ruthless warrior. The half-elf warned that she would deal harshly with anyone who attempted to take her former place, expressed dissatisfaction with her training, or dared to show carelessness. The soldiers obediently shouted, "Yes, ma'am," to affirm their agreement, then set off on several exhausting runs around the village. Once again, Hector was reminded that in battle, anyone could transform their very nature. Thus began the grueling training of the village hunters under the stern guidance of their demonic instructors. 3 months into training, the former recruits became seasoned hunters, forming a special unit. After a threat-free patrol report, Hector thanked them for their service and advised occasional rest. Before long, the sentries atop the bastion reported the swift approach of an unfamiliar wagon and inquired about further orders. The young lord, with a hint of excitement, pondered who these unexpected visitors might be. Suddenly, the ever-watchful sentinel announced that the wagons had come to a halt some distance from the city walls, though it remained unclear what was happening. Excited, he rushed to the wall to see the strange visitors. Since arriving in the village, no guests had come until now, but through the telescope, Hector immediately recognized the familiar silhouette. It was Albedo, the cheerful merchant whom they had not seen in a long time. Before long, the master of the village invited his guest into his home, where he treated him to fragrant tea and a variety of delicacies. Hector noted that Albedo had arrived exactly 3 months later, just as he had promised. The merchant apologized for his slight delay, explaining that business matters in a nearby city had detained him. Albedo remarked that this village was quite different from what the rumors had led him to expect. The merchant was struck by the enchanting, almost new houses and the green fields beyond, but most impressed by the sturdy village walls and solid iron gates, which he felt especially deserved praise. Albedo was filled with immense joy for his friend, wondering whether it was the magic of the earth itself that had brought about such happiness. Hector was pleasantly surprised by the merchant's kind words. He assured him that he had no intention of stopping there. In response, Albedo remarked that he would eagerly await the future accomplishments of his talented leader. The enterprising merchant suggested they get straight to business, clapping his hands theatrically for effect. At that very moment, sturdy young men entered the room, carrying several large sacks, just as Albedo had ordered. It turned out that the merchant had brought a great variety of goods. First and foremost, following Bard's report, Albedo sold essential supplies. This was quickly converted into money. In addition, Albedo purchased nearly all the magic crystals and monster materials gathered by the local residents. As a result of such trade, the village of Plit became noticeably wealthier than before. The merchant admitted he hadn't expected so many useful goods in the village, but now saw its commercial potential. Albedo proposed setting up a trading post, as long as Hector had no objections. The young lord believed the villagers would welcome their first shop. The friends quickly organized everything. Albedo suggested a 20% sales tax, but Hector was more generous and set it at just 10%. The merchant warned of high construction costs, but Hector said he'd build the shop himself. Meanwhile, the village lord asked Albedo to set fair prices. The merchant hesitated, so Hector asked if something was wrong. At last, the merchant agreed to the terms, and Hector immediately suggested they set out for the site where the first albedo doors were to be installed. The friends decided that the best place to open the store was in the heart of the village. The main street ran through this area, constantly bustling with people. It was, they felt, a perfect location for their business. When the merchant asked when construction would start, Hector proudly said it would begin immediately and take only 20 minutes. Albedo, thinking this was a joke, burst out laughing, his laughter echoing down the street. Yet when the shop appeared out of nowhere in just half an hour, the merchant could hardly believe his eyes. Hector suggested that he consult Oram about the interior design, for she was a true master in this field and could bring any vision to life. Albedo was thrilled the shop appeared in 20 minutes, admitting the village always impressed him. Magic's wonder was clear. The merchant saw all that was left was to move his goods in and contact a certain person. A moment later, a cat girl burst into the room. Her curiosity piqued as she asked what was needed. Albedo voiced his request, and the merchant then turned to Kay, offering him the position of manager for the shop in the border village. The little cat wept, protesting life in the remote village. But as soon as Albedo promised a generous reward, Kai's mood shifted, and she insisted the job be hers alone. Kai thanked Hector for the chance to trade, noting his reputation for skill. He thanked her too. Thus, the first shop in Boa village opened, with the catgirl Kai as its proprietor. A few days after Albedo's departure, an unforeseen incident occurred, and it was the sentries atop the walls who were the first to learn of it. A large crowd of fearful, desperate refugees rapidly approached the village, prompting guards to immediately sound the bells and raise an alarm throughout the village in response to the unexpected intrusion. Amanda and her band of courageous travelers reacted instantly to the alarm, bracing themselves for the worst. Hector, first to the city walls, grew curious about the commotion. Guards reported over 100 people fleeing as if pursued. Stunned, the young lord decided to meet the refugees himself and learn about their plight. With the aid of a high-quality binocular, Hector discovered that the terrified people were desperately trying to escape from the dreadful goblins pursuing them at close range. Alarmed, the lord ordered the main gates to be opened, allowing the flood of refugees to pass through. Once inside, he demanded the gates be shut at once, intent on confronting the goblins at the outer wall. The defenders of the village boat carried out their lord's command with unwavering diligence. Meanwhile, Hector addressed the band of adventurers, entrusting them with the task of attacking the goblins and eradicating those abhorrent creatures. All the adventurers were fully prepared for battle, and Amanda assured them that she would give everything she had, as she always did. Outside the city gates, the adventurers formed up in battle order while the heroes surged ahead. Those lingering behind the main group beyond the walls had to hurry to avoid being left behind. Among the band of adventurers was the village elder himself, Hector. Once more, the Earth Mage called upon his magic and conjured a barrier of stone. The goblins proved to be cunning creatures and darted into motion. But the swift and accurate arrows of the half-elf Sifa swiftly took down the most aggressive among them. In addition to Sifa's arrows, volleys also rained down from the city walls. Skilled hunters, masters with their bows, held the brazen goblins at bay, keeping them at a safe distance. Soon, the battle turned into a complete rout of the goblins, and it became clear that the hunters, trained under Sifa's guidance, had become formidable defenders of the village of Botha. The wise mages, alongside Amanda, Dorian, and Oram, expertly supported the rest of the team with their fiery spells. In the meantime, he discovered his own fighting style, skillfully blending earth magic with the art of swordsmanship. As a result, the village of Botha gained impressive military strength and excellent protection against all manner of monsters. In the midst of the clash, Amanda suddenly realized that Despite having already defeated half of the goblins, their fighting spirit remained undiminished. In such circumstances, the monsters should have retreated long ago. Lost in contemplation over the mysterious behavior, Amanda failed to notice the danger creeping up behind her. Fortunately, an actor appeared just in time to warn the courageous adventurer. Amanda managed to leap aside, but the sudden appearance of the Goblin King disrupted the magician's scheme. Faced with such an unexpected adversary, Amanda was left stunned and uncertain of her next move. Immediately afterward, Amanda noticed enormous balls of fire hurtling toward them. The goblin mages and generals quickly organized a counterattack, seizing the initiative. Amanda realized that the increasing aggression of their opponents stemmed from the arrival of stronger goblins on the battlefield. The brave adventurers and the leaders of the assault squads resolved to put an end to the Goblin King and save the wizard's enchanted tale. Amanda lunged forward, dodging the Goblin King's attack and landing a blow with her sword. A terrible roar of pain echoed far beyond the city limits as the severed hand of the Goblin King fell to the ground, releasing the witch's door from its grip. The Goblin King raged, intent on avenging his lost limb, but Ectro was quick to weave an earthen web that thwarted every move he made. Wasting no time and recognizing the perfect opportunity, Amanda signaled everyone to attack the Goblin King together. With their king gone, the goblins fled in panic. The village was saved, and the actor and heroes returned to the settlement, where Rin, overjoyed at their return, rushed to warmly embrace them. One of the refugees introduced himself as Radan and explained that he was acting as the head of the nearby village of Bak. In response, Hector gave his own name and inquired about the whereabouts of their actual village chief. He explained that his father, the village elder, had perished at the hands of goblins along with many other villagers. Their village lay nearly destroyed, and now they had nowhere left to return. The actor now realized just how dire the plight of these unfortunate people truly was. The young nobleman said their walled fertile estate would welcome all refugees if village head OG agreed. OG gave immediate support, swiftly resolving the matter. Radan was genuinely pleased by Ektar's hospitality and asked whether they truly could all stay. The Earth Mage confirmed his offer, so long as Radan himself had no objections. Owing to an extraordinary twist of fate, the population of the village of Boda increased significantly, providing a powerful impetus for its growth and development. In response to the wishes of the residents, the church from the village of Bak was relocated to the village of Boda, where new homes had been built. Father Bazini from Bak expressed deep gratitude on behalf of his parishioners to Ekter and rejoiced to hold the prophecy ceremony, while Ekter was pleased to see the people granted a second chance. Suddenly, as Ektar and the priest Bazini were deep in conversation, Rin burst into the room, visibly agitated. The young lord asked her to wait, assuring her that he would return soon so she could tell him everything. Yet Rin appeared deeply troubled by something and hurried to her master, anxious to explain everything. Ektra, for his part, was perplexed by the situation. Rin, although somewhat clumsily, began to apologize and tried to express everything she felt. Hector then asked if the old rule forbidding servants from attending church upset her. In this magical world, slaves faced constant discrimination and a precarious status. In Grand, Rin especially felt it, as slaves were banned from churches and many other places throughout the city. Yet the time had come to break these old stereotypes and show Rinna that her life could be entirely different. Hector decided to act in his own way, and in doing so, he surprised the troubled girl. The Jinn offered no objection, yet Rin insisted that a woman like her could never endure the ceremony with the priest. Nevertheless, the young lord reiterated that Rin was no longer a slave. No one would ever scorn her again. Rin, with a pang of pain, recalled all the wrongs of her childhood and the cruelty she had endured from unkind people. The young woman trembled with emotion as tears of joy and resentment mingled in salty streams she could not hold back. This mixture of happiness and frustration left her unable to find peace. Upon returning from the hunt, Amanda was surprised by a new revelation. After the divination ritual, Rin had mastered light magic. Hector explained that her ability to wield healing spells was the clearest evidence of these newfound powers. Amanda felt a pang of envy, for healers were rare and difficult to find. It would be wonderful if Rin decided to join her team. Amanda offered Rin the opportunity to leave her maid's position and join her team, promising to pay her 3 times as much. Yet Rin, without hesitation, refused, declaring that her true calling was to serve Hector. It was likely the first time Amanda had faced such a disappointing refusal, and the experience left her deeply upset. Seeking to divert the adventurer's attention, Hector inquired about the results of their hunt. The young lord explained that while food was undoubtedly important, he did not wish for the passionate adventurer to overindulge and thus lose all her strength before the perilous hunt ahead. Hector advised Amanda to take better care of both her own health and that of the teenager. The adventurer agreed with the lord's suggestion and promised to adjust the schedule of her excursions to the forest. Amanda explained that they found orcs rebuilding a settlement deep in the forest and decided to oust them. Signs showed the orcs had driven out goblins. Hector suspected an orc king, and Amanda added the orcs began abducting women. Amanda recounted how she had once saved a woman who had been held captive by orcs. It had been a truly dramatic spectacle. At first, it was impossible to tell whether the woman was still alive, so pitiful was her condition. Amanda comforted the woman, assuring her safety, but things worsened upon learning she was pregnant with Orkor's child. Meanwhile, the spider cocooned the abducted children, storing them as a future food supply. In the end, the woman could not come to terms with everything that had happened, and before long, she took her own life. The actor was deeply unsettled by this chilling tale and came to realize the true monstrosity of the orcs. Even when they did not kill outright, their actions still shattered human lives. Always cheerful, Aurum announced that this time no one had been abducted, and such an event would never happen again. Ectro, observing little Aurum, noted to himself how convincing she sounded. The young lord expressed his gratitude to the entire band of adventurers for their protection, then announced that a meat festival was taking place in the village that day, where a great deal of orc meat would need to be prepared. The celebration went splendidly. Amanda and the others embraced the festivities with full delight, savoring the crisp, refreshing ale. That day, every villager received a share of orc meat. United in celebration, they reveled in joy and made the most of their merriment. He created the half-elf Sepher so that the villagers of Bach would join the band of hunters. They were to undergo grueling training in order to become stronger. In this endeavor, only Sepher could truly be relied upon. The adventurers said every hunter wanted to equal her skills. Though it was very hard, Sepher noted she used unique physical modifications in training. Hector recalled Hunter Ed, who changed completely after intense training. Amanda, obviously drunk and reeking of alcohol, entered and asked why Hector and Sepher weren't in the drinking contest. Hector worried about her, but she insisted she felt wonderful and said she was truly enjoying the village. Amanda explained that this place was home to countless magical creatures that could be hunted, and the village itself was constantly growing. She thought it would be wonderful if Ecto could someday turn it into a true town. Ecto and Amanda had a long talk about future cooperation and improving the village, but Amanda, after drinking too much, fell asleep, leaving Ecto recalling how she once despised him more than anyone. As Ecto gazed at the sleeping Amanda, her slumbering form reminiscent of a child, he felt a profound gratitude for her support and kindness. As spring approached and the earth grew warm, Ektar and his squad of assault wings set out in search of resources to help the village thrive. The destination of their journey was a perilous stretch of forest at the end of the Abulka Mountains. He was told the expedition would be long and arduous and asked if Ektar was ready. The young lord replied the team needed him, as only he could appraise ore. Hector doubted the adventurers could handle the task without an earth mage, but Aurum, lacking the needed strength, suggested the nearby village iron ore mine and asked if it might be enough. They explained the deposit would meet their own needs. The expedition aimed to find mithril or other valuable metals to expand trade, and new materials would boost production, solving both resource and economic issues. Aurum declared that in that case, she would be the first to scout ahead, and dashed forward, not even hearing the warning about the steepness of the hill ahead. Amanda hurried toward the summit, captivated by the promise of a breathtaking view awaiting her. Meanwhile, Aurum turned back and warned the others of a potential danger. The half-dwarf explained that this hill closely resembled the back of a green dragon. This revelation unsettled Amanda, prompting her to immediately order everyone to leave the place. Aurum had not been mistaken. Soon, the hill began to tremble and move, tossing the unexpected visitors from its back. A furious green dragon demanded to know why they were walking across him. The monstrous creature turned its massive head toward the band of adventurers, and the dragon demanded to know who they were. The dragon's siphons seethed with anger at the unexpected arrival of the strange group, determined to uncover their true identities. The most astonishing thing was that Hector could hear the voices of the dragons in his mind through telepathy. Moreover, the dragons were incredibly intelligent and could easily converse in human language. One of the lords placed his hopes in his diplomatic skills, striving to reach a compromise with the colossal monster, a creature easily capable of destroying the entire group of travelers. They apologized to the green dragon for carelessly stepping onto its back, explaining that their group was on a journey to the distant Mount Abulkar. The enormous dragon fixed a piercing gaze upon the young earth mage and inquired whether such a small man could truly survive in a forest teeming with perilous monsters. Hector gathered himself, striving to appear confident, and replied that he was well aware of the dangers lurking in the forest and fully understood that countless monsters awaited him there. He had never expected to encounter a real dragon, yet he found himself captivated by the majestic creature and delighted by the extraordinary companionship that had unexpectedly entered his life. The green dragon wondered whether Hector would be able to make his way through this forest and return home unchanged. The green dragon unfurled its wings and soared sharply upward, showering the travelers below with a hail of stones. The mighty monster declared that if Ektar managed to conquer Mount Abulkar, it would be an extraordinary achievement. The green dragon vowed that, should this come to pass, their meeting would be inevitable. With those words, the great beast vanished into the clouded sky, while the band of daring souls celebrated their fortunate escape. Amanda expressed her delight at how events had unfolded, noting that she was relieved not to face an invincible opponent. Now, she said, it was time for them to move on. Amanda advised them to be more cautious in order to prevent similar incidents in the future. The squad agreed with her and pressed onward, their vigilance heightened. After a week of exhausting travels, the group at last emerged from the perilous forest and felt the cool touch of the mountain wind. The temperature continued to drop, and the peaks of the Abulkar Mountains drew steadily nearer. Surrounded by imposing rocks and stones, Amanda wondered where Hector would search for ore, but the Earth Mage reassured her he'd need time to examine the area and promised to return with his findings once he found a suitable spot. Lecter selected a reasonably suitable spot and activated a magical geological survey to determine what valuable materials might be found there. Hector excitedly announced his discovery, and Arim sensed mithril. The young lord agreed with the half-dwarf girls, recognizing they'd found something extraordinary that required immediate attention. At first, the young lord suggested they ascend to a higher cave, and Amanda readily agreed with his proposal. Climbing the steep cliff proved challenging, demanding that the traveler draw upon every bit of her mountaineering skill. At one point, little Aurum lost her balance when a rock crumbled beneath her hand. The girl clung to another ledge and narrowly avoided falling. Aurum's life flashed before her eyes. She thought she might die. Once recovered, she resolved to keep climbing, silently vowing never to look down again. Soon, the entire group of travelers reached the summit, where massive gates to a mysterious cave unfolded before them. Hector commended himself for his foresight in preparing torches ahead of time. Amanda agreed, remarking that they had proven invaluable, as torches were an essential companion on any expedition into a cave. The prudent sorceress Doreen admitted that this cave stirred strange sensations within her. As it turned out, she was not alone in her feelings. Each of the travelers also confessed to being seized by something unusual the moment they set foot inside. Soon, everyone noticed that most cave openings looked strikingly similar, as if man-made. Hector studied the walls and wondered if they might not be the first to enter this mysterious place. The travelers reached a fork in the path and had to choose a direction. Aurum sensed the mithril vein was left, and that route looked recently used. Then suddenly, a stone came out of nowhere and struck the girl. A coarse voice echoed from deep within the cave, demanding to know who dared trespass without permission. Unprepared, the adventurers raised their torches, trying to glimpse the figure confronting them. Soon, a red-haired dwarf approached the travelers and inquired about their identities. Hector explained they were from Botha in Falsford. Harry the dwarf was amazed they'd survived the dangerous forest, while a local cave dweller hugged the young lord so tightly Hector's bones creaked, but he endured it bravely. Donovan, a dwarf from the kingdom of the High Dwarves, proved to be a friendly fellow. He explained that his proud race spent most of their lives within caves, and that this was the first time he had ever encountered real humans. Donovan explained these dwarves' lives centered on mining mithril and adamantium, using them daily and rarely interacting with other races. Amanda was amazed their tools, common to them, were worth hundreds of times more than her sword. Mithril is an exceptionally strong, yet lightweight metal. Adamantine ranks as the second toughest metal in the world, surpassed only by orichalcum. Both of these metals are renowned for their immense value and extraordinary rarity. Donovan displayed remarkable hospitality by inviting his guests from the cave to meet the other members of his family. Soon, the adventurers arrived in the Dwarven settlement. Donovan introduced them to Gorgon, the clan leader, noting they had bravely made it through the dangerous forest to reach the settlement. The expressions on the faces of Gargant and his fellow dwarves made it clear that their mood was far from sharing Donovan's friendly demeanor. In an instant, the atmosphere grew tense, sharp with unspoken hostility. Gargan declared that this land belonged to the Gidoiram, and that coming here had been a grave mistake. Regardless of the people's response, they could never return to the place from which they had come. For the story to continue, Good from the well-known land must not leave the cave. He was shocked by the hostility following Chief Harkin's words, realizing a warm welcome was hopeless. Maybe dwarves were always cold, or perhaps Donovan, the red-haired one, was just an unusually friendly fool. The warriors were preparing to settle the matter by force, but the young lord calmed them, assuring everyone that the situation was under control and asking the adventurer to refrain from any rash actions. The actor explained to the chief dwarf that their sole purpose was to find Orvana. Therefore, if possible, it would be ideal to receive the dwarves' permission to mine. In response, Gorgon roared that he had never heard such nonsense in all his life. The guard explained that for generations, the dwarves had protected this mountain. Therefore, all of Abulkar's treasures belonged to them alone, and no one else had any claim to them. Hector explained that he had never intended to seize anyone's treasures by force. He was merely proposing a fair exchange and mutually beneficial cooperation. This offer piqued Garja's interest, and he paused to consider it. Hector assured them they could quickly get anything they needed here and order any goods, and as he considered this, the young lord realized he'd never suspected other mines existed in the region besides this one. For the sake of the village boat's future, it was wise to pursue an understanding with the stern dwarves as smoothly as possible. Hedgargan was considering the proposal when suddenly shouts rang out. A frightened dwarf brought alarming news. Deep within the cave, a killer spider had taken up residence and had already captured some children. The spider's nest was perched so high that reaching it seemed impossible. The actor and the adventurers saw this as their opportunity to mend relations with the dwarves, and so they resolved to assist in the search for the murderer. The travelers swiftly tracked down the killer spider. Amanda charged forward without hesitation, but her sword could not harm the towering creature. At that crucial moment, Safer intervened and loosed several arrows. Ada saw the danger was too great and decided to help the adventurers. Using earth magic, he formed earthen ledges to reach the cocoons, but his sword was useless against the webbing, and he couldn't free the children. The spider lunged to protect its prey, attempting to attack the audacious man. Its web, cast in an effort to hinder, ensnared Hector's arm, leaving him almost defenseless. But suddenly, a red-haired gentleman came to the rescue, freeing Hector with a powerful swing of his axe. The young lord thanked Donovan for his timely help. Donovan noted the spider's threads were too elastic and offered his weapon, the dwarf's mithril axe, far superior to swords used by ordinary adventurers. Hector was enthralled by the mithril weaponry and ordered all the adventurers to arm themselves with it. Equipped with their new mithril gear, the team now had a real chance of defeating the spider killer and set to their task with determination. Everyone was filled with confidence and a firm resolve to launch a true massacre of the spiders and rescue the defenseless dwarf children. Soon, the brave team, joined by Hector and Donovan, rescued all the young children, who, with tears of joy streaming down their faces, rushed back into the arms of their parents. The spiders were vanquished, and at last, the threat had been eliminated. The band of adventurers was immensely pleased with themselves, having once again proven their ability to defeat even the most dangerous of monsters. Actor and Donovan grew even closer, sharing in the joy of their shared triumph. Headganger admitted his mistake and apologized, acknowledging the adventurers were key in defeating the dreadful spider. The head of the War of the Guides thanked them deeply for rescuing their young compatriots on behalf of his people. Yet Hector reminded them that without help, their own strength would not have been enough to overcome the venomous spider. In light of this, the young lord resolved to make one more request of Gargan. Hector said they urgently needed mithril and meant no harm in using it, so he suggested a mutually beneficial deal. Gargan found Hector unusually candid and intriguing. One of the elder dwarves embraced Hector, confessing his fondness for him, and declared that they would celebrate this day with a glass of wine and a song as a token of mutual gratitude. He remarked that if Hector could outdrink him, then perhaps he would agree to make a deal and establish relations. Hector was taken aback by such a condition and realized that a serious trial awaited him. Hector knew dwarves had the highest alcohol tolerance of any race, and soon saw it firsthand. They could drink remarkable amounts of spirits and still stay on their feet. The Dwarven celebration proved to be truly magnificent. Music filled the air while bonfires blazed, and guests drank heartily and sang at the top of their voices. The band of brave adventurers reveled in the hospitality and the plentiful fare. Hedginger said that in the harsh climate, alcohol was always scarce, so they would trade strong drink for quality mithril. Hector, despite limited alcohol in his village, agreed, as arranging albedo delivery would solve everything. Hector agreed to the terms set forth by the leader of the tall dwarves and promised to provide a steady supply of strong liquor to their cavern. Thus, a trade agreement was forged between the dwarves and the village of Boda. He was relieved by the swift conclusion of the agreement, or rather, he rejoiced at the thought that he would not have to take part in a drinking contest. However, Ganga had not forgotten his promise and reminded them that he would agree to a deal beneficial to both sides only if he could outdrink his counterpart. The actor realized the real problem wasn't the alcohol, but his situation. Refusing the dwarf's condition would end negotiations, so he saw he had no choice but to accept the absurd drinking contest. It turned out that the dwarves had a habit of drinking not from glasses, but straight from the bottle in large gulps. Hector, too, tasted the sharp sting of strong alcohol, yet managed to summon all his willpower. With every new sip, the alcohol tasted better to Hector, and soon he was drinking it as casually as water. Though Ganga was far ahead in the number of bottles he had consumed, he was still unmistakably drunk. After hours of drinking, empty bottles covered the ground. Surprisingly, the High Dwarves chief was first to pass out. Amanda gave Hector an approving nod, not expecting he would win. The young gentleman was terribly weak. He had quite literally stumbled into adventure, only to be seized at once by dreadful waves of nausea. This ordeal lasted for some time, but at last, Hector managed to fall asleep. The next morning, Hector awoke with a terrible hangover and was greatly surprised to find himself in the mountains with his squad. Their journey continued, and before long, a powerful roar echoed from a newly discovered cave. Hector cautioned that there were no traces of the tall dwarves here, so they needed to remain vigilant. Donovan soon joined the group and carefully surveyed the area while the others took a rest. Everyone wondered why they woke so early, until Hector explained the clamor had disturbed their sleep, which turned out to be the dwarves clearing the mine path and breaking up stubborn rocks blocking the way. It became clear that the dwarves were employing the method of blasting. Soon a dwarf appeared, holding strange objects in his hands, and promised to demonstrate everything. Once the charges had been set in their designated places, Donovan ordered everyone to take cover. Hector, filled with anticipation, awaited something extraordinary, while the red-haired gnome reassured him, urging a bit more patience. Soon, the same dwarf who had been carrying the charges came running at full speed and took cover. Mere seconds later, a tremendous explosion thundered through the air, leaving all the travelers stunned. In the cave, countless stones had collapsed from the explosion, and Donovan urged them to continue. This reminded Hector of using dynamite in Japan, and lately, dreams of that strange place visited him more often. So Hector couldn't grasp how the dwarves got such advanced tech. Amanda, Aurum, and Doreen were stunned by the explosion's power, admiring its monster-fighting potential. Doreen thought even dragons might not survive its might. Doran planned an explosion even stronger than dynamite, but Amanda convinced her to stop. Ultimately, Doran just wanted to prove she could blow things up, as well as the dwarves. After calming the sorceress, he explained her magic surpassed ordinary explosions, noting Doran's surprising competitiveness, and clarified that the blast technology was an ancestral secret entrusted only to top dwarves by tradition. Hector believed the High Dwarves' explosive technology was likely invented by a reincarnated human like himself, and since it was so powerful, it was wise for the dwarves to keep it secret so others stayed unaware of it. As Hector wandered through the cave, he noticed something unusual, a fragment of an unfamiliar material. Donovan was astonished, for it turned out to be a remarkable shard of adamantinua. Donovan said finding such a rare metal was extremely lucky, even for a genius like him. Hector wondered if, knowing its exact composition, he could create adamantine as he did with iron ore. The strikingly beautiful adamantium fragment captivated the travelers, who eagerly inspected the rare ore, as Donovan explained that explosions sometimes revealed such treasures. Then, the red-haired man requested the actor's sword. After inspecting the blade, Donovan saw it had been badly damaged in yesterday's battle with the spider killer. While it could still be useful for some tasks, it wouldn't last long in its current condition. Donovan promised the young lord he'd forge him a new sword from the finest adamantine. Hector, thrilled yet skeptical, asked if Donovan truly intended to make such a weapon for him. The red-haired dwarf explained that this would be his personal gesture of gratitude for the rescue of the children the previous day. Moreover, Donovan vowed to forge a new weapon for each of the adventurers, using nothing but mithril. After this conversation, Donovan passionately declared his willingness to forge weapons for all the guests of the Dwarven land. Hector was thrilled with the flawless, sharp, and beautifully crafted sword, the finest he'd ever held, and thanked Donovan, who declared it a blacksmith's masterpiece. The team rejoiced, sure it would make them more skilled and formidable. The actor turned to Gargan, dwarf leader, who nursed his first hangover after losing consciousness from drinking. Admitting defeat, Gargan agreed their trade deal would stand, and vowed to exchange mithril for the best human alcohol. The Dwarven chief admitted little knowledge of alcohol prices, but trusted Hector, asking only that Nifral's value not be underestimated. Hector assured him it was highly prized and would fetch only the finest, generous amounts of alcohol. Ganga ordered the travelers' bags to be filled with Ifril ore and made Hector promise that they would one day repeat their splendid feast. After this, the head of the Hyderbs reminded Donovan of his wish to speak. The lively red-haired gnome instantly grew solemn and recalled to Hector how deeply he valued his place among the Hyderbs. After meeting Hector and his companions, he gained a deeper understanding of humanity and wanted to explore the world. Eventually, Donovan asked Hector to take him to his settlement, promising to become a better blacksmith. Hector praised Donovan's unrivaled forge skills, calling his help vital to the settlement's growth and gratitude. With matters settled, the travelers prepared to return, and Oram promised to someday visit the dwarves again. Ganga invited Donovan on the next trip and vowed revenge on Hector at the drinking contest. Donovan promised Ganga a chance to win back his losses, declaring he was ready to drink with him any time, win or lose. Amanda recalled the actor's condition after his night of drinking and resolved to avoid such unpleasant situations in the future. Through their perilous journey into the mountains, Hector and his companions forged new friendships with the tall dwarves. They left Bulka's highest peak with spirits lifted. Their journey home led them through a treacherous forest, compelling them to proceed with utmost caution. Soon, 3 saber-toothed panthers threatened the travelers. Now armed with mithril weapons, they could face the beasts. Yet, Knowing the hill of the green dragon was near, they aimed to avoid unwanted attention. Hector remembered the green dragon's promise to meet again, aware that no one wanted to provoke such a beast with no guarantee of survival. The young lord resolved to proceed cautiously, prompting Amanda to ask what occupied his thoughts. However, all plans were abruptly overturned when the red-haired dwarf declared that the saber-toothed panthers were not nearly as dangerous as they appeared. In his words, they were nothing more than kittens worthy of a warm greeting. The red-haired warrior had no time to react to the swift creature's lightning attack and was hurled far to the side. This sudden move served as a signal for the other panthers, marking the point of no return. Now, a clash was inevitable. The adventurers realized that their weapons had been forged from mithril, and this newfound knowledge filled them with confidence that they could swiftly overcome the fierce beasts. As a true leader, Amanda was the first to charge into the fray, dispatching the saber-toothed panthers with swift, precise movements. Everyone, even Hector, watched in awe at the strength and agility displayed by these fearless adventurers. The magical stones had dropped from the saber-toothed panthers, but Hector thought any extra burden would slow the squad, so he preferred avoiding the monsters and finding another route, which Amanda agreed with and reprioritized her team. No one was more relieved than Aurum, who hated carrying heavy loads. Seeing her struggle with her sack, Donovan remarked that such a lovely girl shouldn't be burdened and insisted on carrying it for her himself. Gradually, Donovan offered his assistance to everyone else, gathering up all the sacks filled with precious Aurum. Then, quite unexpectedly, he quickened his pace, surged ahead, and called out over his shoulder, "Until next time." The sudden jolt startled all the travelers. Sephir cried out, accusing the red-haired dwarf of planning to steal the mithril, while Hector, shocked, couldn't grasp why Donovan had surged forward so abruptly. Amanda, the group leader, rushed ahead as the actor warned them about Green Dragon territory. Still, whether ignoring or not hearing the young lord, the travelers continued after the dwarf. Amanda resolved to pursue Donovan at any cost, determined not only to recover the valuable cargo, but also to teach the red-haired scoundrel a lesson, showing him that one could not treat people in such a manner. He continued to pursue Donovan, marveling at the dwarf's speed as he carried the heavy sacks without slowing his pace. For the band of heroes, returning the precious mithril was a matter of honor, but suddenly an overwhelming roar shattered the silence, sending every bird soaring into the sky above the forest, while the animals froze in silent terror. The green dragon noticed the movement of people and chose to act. The majestic creature recalled having encountered these travelers before and announced that he had been eagerly awaiting their arrival. The event surprised both the travelers and Hector. Contrary to expectations, Donovan wasn't fleeing, but rushed to greet the green dragon, embracing it warmly as if it were an old friend. When asked if Donovan really knew the green dragon, the red-haired dwarf said the gnomes saw it as a forest deity who let them hunt in the woods, so he sometimes brought it small mithril offerings in gratitude. Despite her despair, Amanda kept accusing Donovan of stealing the mithril and fleeing. The good-natured dwarf insisted he was innocent, though he knew his actions could seem suspicious to outsiders. Donovan, enthusiastic, clarified he'd been misunderstood and rushed to the green dragon to gather what was needed. The dwarf apologized, and the actor saw their doubts about Donovan's honesty had been unfounded. The green dragon told Hector his meeting with the elder dwarves went well. Hector described his safe journey. The dragon, trusting Donovan's honesty and kindness, felt reassured and simply awaited their meeting. The actor let Donovan transfer half the mithril aura to the green dragon, delighting the red-haired dwarf. The historian enchantress objected, but the actor urged her to calm down and rethink the situation. Avan explained that the green dragon kept the perilous forest in harmony, and everyone owed the dragon. He forged splendid weapons for the group, gratefully thanked Ektar for his kindness, and appreciated the mithril for his friend. The adventurers and Ektar watched with fascination as the enormous green dragon devoured the mithril with evident pleasure. The young lord decided to be patient. Soon, he would have access to a considerable amount of this precious metal. After the meal, the green dragon thanked Hector for the feast, and the mage promised to bring mithril from Mount Abulkar next time. Overjoyed, Donovan told his friend he had decided to live among humans. The green dragon found the High Gnome's decision unusual, but respected it. He told Hector he could rely on his help in the dangerous forest, and as a token of friendship, gave Hector some of his strength. Before leaving, the green dragon asked the young lord to watch over Donovan. The travelers left the forest for their village, where the joyful Rin greeted and embraced her beloved lord, rejoicing in his safe return. The emotional reunion excited Rin, and once she calmed down, she asked who Hector had brought. Donovan said the newcomer was the most skilled dwarf and would one day become the village's best blacksmith. Herkin, the local blacksmith, was thrilled by the seasoned master's company and admitted he'd gladly learn the craft from the visiting dwarves. The red-haired gentleman agreed, making Herkin his first human apprentice. Cypher asked if the hunting party's weapons could be improved. Donovan promised to help and requested specifics. Aurum offered spider silk from the Dwarven cave to enhance Cypher's bow, and Cypher gratefully thanked her for the useful gift. After returning, the travelers parted ways. Donovan stayed with Rin, while the rest went to Kay's shop. The cat girl thanked them for the mithril, and though Cain asked where it was found, Hector only said it was a secret. Containing Cain's curiosity proved impossible. In jest, they referred to Hector as a cunning ruler. In the meantime, Hector suggested that they move on to discuss the price. The director said mithril deliveries would start today and asked Kay to notify her management, but noted that trade required a steady supply of quality alcohol. Kay agreed, but mentioned some difficulties had come up. The store manager noted that they had little cash on hand, so in the event of large deliveries, it would be necessary to contact Albedo. Ektra asked that her regards be passed on to Albedo when Kay approached to request a large shipment of alcohol. The manager urged Promise to do the right thing, then returned to his own affairs. Having finished all his tasks, the actor finally set out for home, where long-awaited solace awaited him. First, the young gentleman indulged in a hot, relaxing bath after savoring a delicious meal prepared by Rin. Then, he realized it was finally time to drift off to sleep in a real bed, something he had missed dearly. After a long separation, the bed felt far more comfortable than it truly was. As Hector slowly drifted into sleep, he resolved that tomorrow he would certainly begin building a home for Donovan Koval. It was essential for him to hear the account of events that had unfolded in the village during his long absence. Lost in these thoughts, Hector nearly drifted off to sleep. His sleep was abruptly interrupted. The young lord became aware of a gentle softness and a pleasant fragrance. The moment Hector opened his eyes, any trace of drowsiness vanished, for Rin was lying beside him. The girl apologized, explaining that she had missed him terribly and simply could not resist gazing upon the sleeping lord's face. After reassuring Rin that she should not blame herself, insisting that nothing terrible had happened, Lord explained that it had simply been unexpected to open her eyes and find Rin so close. Elatia asked for a moment of attention, but Hector complained that he was feeling unwell, his heartbeat quickening. Rin insisted it was nothing more than nerves and began to express her joy at being reunited with her master. The actor and Rin discussed every detail of their upcoming gnome cave journey before relaxing. Prince Hector of the Resistance then took her to the church, where Father Badgini performed a divination ritual for her. A few days later, merchant Elbeto arrived in Boda. Hector warmly greeted him and apologized for the long journey. But Elbeto showed no displeasure. He was simply happy to see his old friend again. Elbeto explained that he had received a message from Kay and decided to deliver the shipment of alcohol himself. Hector was grateful for such promptness, as the timing could not have been better. Elbeto was amazed by the actor's success in extracting mithril and anticipated profits. The merchant asked if Hector had found a new mine, but the young lord hesitated, unsure whether to share the full truth. The young lord secretly told the trader of his journey to a desolate mine, asking for confidentiality. Albedo agreed, but noted that such dangerous ventures were usually left to experienced adventurers. Hector admitted he had faced real danger several times. The village boat owner decided reaching the dwarves' cave that way was too risky and concluded building an underground tunnel directly to the mine was best. Hector also explained to the merchant that only he and 5 other adventurers knew the exact location of the coveted mine. Therefore, the amount of mithril available was limited by their ability to transport what they had extracted. Elbedo concluded that this would not pose much of a problem, for even with a modest haul, mithril would still yield an excellent profit. Albedo asked Hector not to discuss mithril supplies with other merchants, offering to cover transport and lower essential goods prices for locals. Hector agreed, asking about trust, and the lord affirmed mutual trust since Albedo was his only merchant. The spectre assured Elbedo that he would trade exclusively with him, urging him not to worry. The merchant was delighted by this arrangement, for it granted him a monopoly over the mythological rural trade. After that conversation, Hector not only retained his status as a feudal lord, but also emerged as a true individual, having signed an official cooperation agreement with Albedo. The essence of this personal trade agreement was that from now on, Hector could conduct business transactions without needing his father's permission. Hector realized he needed to sell all his mithril quickly and profitably, knowing its arrival on the market would attract buyers instantly, so he had to proceed cautiously to avoid complications. Only a few months after trade had begun through Mithal, the venture attracted the attention of even the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Falseford. Minister Alfonso Grenville found himself deeply perplexed by the complexities that had arisen in the goods market and pursued solutions to these challenges with determined persistence. The Prime Minister had clear evidence of surging mithril trade in Falseford. Though Alfonso ordered a search for clues, nothing useful emerged. The only certainty was that the rare metals quantity kept increasing daily. Mithril trade routes were so cleverly concealed they were impossible to track. Regardless of the route, the Albedo Trading Company was always the link, and one site, often visited by an Albedo representative, received special notice. This land was part of the vast estate owned by Margrave Glenride. Suddenly, the Prime Minister's thoughts were interrupted by the pleasant voice of his granddaughter. Into the room stepped young Lillian, the Prime Minister's beloved granddaughter. Her very presence could dispel even the darkest of her grandfather's thoughts. Prime Minister Afonso inquired why Lillian was unable to sleep. It was already quite late. His enchanting granddaughter confessed that she was suffering from insomnia. She confided that she was deeply worried about her dear grandfather, whose health seemed to decline with each passing day. The anxiety kept her awake at night. Alfonso replied that he was fine. He explained that lately he had been overwhelmed with important matters and, regrettably, a prime minister has no alternative. The most recent incident was particularly serious, demanding considerable time and effort. Lillian suggested discussing all the problems with her and assured that she would not tell anyone a word. The Prime Minister paused, considering that while the information wasn't confidential, discussing it with his perceptive granddaughter might provide fresh insights and intriguing advice. Alfonso explained that mithril trade had recently surged in the capital's market. Liliana, with childlike innocence, wondered if this was great, since now anyone could buy as much as they wanted. The weary old man said lords had to report new mines to the government, but no word of mithril deposits had reached them, making this situation highly unusual and in need of thorough investigation. She asked if reporting a new mine's location would reduce profits, but Alfonso disagreed, saying the owner should cooperate with the government, as such a partnership could actually bring unexpected benefits. Whoever discovered such a magnificent mithril mine would earn royal honor and kingdom-wide fame. Lillian agreed with her grandfather that there was little reason to hide their find. Thus, there were good reasons not to keep it secret. Prime Minister Alfonso explained that the company supplying mithril primarily routed its trade through the lands governed by Margrave Glenrid. According to the map, only Boda village is located there, surrounded by impenetrable forest. Founded to extract resources from the vast border woodlands, the project failed, and the village was soon nearly abandoned. It was hardly surprising that such rapid development in the region might conceal something greater. Who could say? Perhaps there truly was a mithril deposit hidden there. Even Margrave Glenridu, lord of these lands, might not know about the mithril. A secret deal between an albedo merchant and the unknown discoverer of a new deposit kept the truth hidden. Prime Minister Alfonso considered telling His Majesty what had happened. Lillian asked about nearby border posts. The wise old man said he wanted to set one up, but needed written permission from the local Margrave first. Alfonso also explained that if news about the Mithro incident were to reach the public, there was a risk that Mithro supplies from the village could cease entirely, a prospect that was decidedly undesirable. With pride, Lillian announced that she had discovered a way to help her beloved grandfather. Alfonso, in turn, replied that he had never doubted the abilities of his cherished granddaughter and was ready to hear her plan. Lily trembled slightly with nerves, realizing that her idea might not particularly interest her grandfather. The young woman visited the village incognito. The Prime Minister, unsure about discussing important matters with a child due to her unpredictability, hesitated, while Lillian awaited praise, sure her grandfather would love her idea. Usually, when Lillian set her mind on something, persuading her otherwise was simply impossible. This time was no exception. She was determined to uncover the mystery of Boda village's mythical business, no matter what it took. The young granddaughter of the Prime Minister pledged to assist her grandfather and unravel the mystery surrounding the extraction of mithril. Meanwhile, the mining of mithril continued unabated. Donovan noted that the newly constructed underground tunnel had greatly simplified the transportation of the heavy mine doors. They immediately recognized how much time they would save on transportation using NT, the large ship. Sefer also noted that there would be no monsters in the tunnel, allowing her to focus all her energy on moving the cargo. The straight road from Boda to Empty ran over 50 kilometers. Hector built 3 rest areas inside the tunnel and a special exit to the Green Dragon, letting him deliver his mithril ore share directly after leaving Mount Abulgar. Every 500 meters along the tunnel, ventilation shafts had been constructed to allow fresh air to flow inside. As a result, the tunnel was always filled with clean, crisp air. The walls of the tunnel were lined with special luminous plants that provided natural light. If that proved insufficient, torches were always at hand to brighten the way. As promised, Hector consistently provided top dwarves with quality spirits. Albedo, pleased with this, became the nation's main mithril supplier. Though demanding, 2 months' hard work had already brought impressive results. When the adventurers and Hector surfaced, they parted ways. The treasure seekers hid the mithril in a secret cache, while the young lord thanked them and returned to the village, where he noticed a discreet, peculiar carriage. The carriage, drawn by horses, looked nothing like something owned by the villagers. It bore a far greater resemblance to a city conveyance. Yet this did not deter Hector, who set off for home, hoping at last for some rest. However, it became known that a messenger from the neighboring lands of Viscount Avan's had visited the young lord. The mysterious carriage had delivered this envoy to the estate shortly before Hector himself returned. They explained that since the master was not at home, they had sent a messenger to the village elder's residence. Hector was surprised by this unexpected visit, and without hesitation, he decided to read the letter. Avan, a child ruling a nearby territory under Margrave Glenride, was unknown to Hector, who recalled no meetings or letters from him and was curious about the stranger's intentions. The letter showed Avan knew he was writing to the Margrave's third son. He congratulated him on both his growth and prosperity and wished to stroll through the village with his daughter. News of Hector, being an earth mage, had already swept through the entire capital. However, his father had told no one that he himself had exiled his son to the outskirts of the country, and it seemed he had no intention of ever revealing the truth. Hector realized that if Evans just wanted to monitor the village, a visit was unnecessary. Given Evans's relationship with his father, it was clear he meant to enter Boda village without his father knowing. Hector speculated that perhaps the people of Avan had noticed certain anomalies in the distribution of mithril and had connected them to the village of Pod. However, his father had taken no action in this regard. Should it indeed turn out that Viscount Avance has joined Albedo's company, and that this is the true reason behind his desire to visit, one could say without hesitation that this man is a most intelligent and cunning leader. Yet the actor remained calm, confident that his secret underground hideout would never be discovered, and therefore no evidence would come to light. This seemed the perfect opportunity to learn more about his neighbor. The actor decided it was time to forge a new acquaintance, so he prepared an invitation for Viscount Avan, noting that he was eagerly awaited in the village of Boda. The letter was entrusted to a messenger, who immediately set off on the return journey, determined to deliver it to the Viscount as swiftly as possible. A few days later, an excited Wren burst into Hector's room with news. A carriage had arrived, accompanied by a detachment of cavalry. Hector immediately realized that the neighboring Viscount, whom they had invited, had come at last. The young lord said a distinguished guest had arrived and ordered the gates opened for the carriage, but Ed, captain of the hunt, waited for Hector's decision before allowing the gates to be unlocked. Hector greeted the guests, introduced himself, and welcomed them to Boda. The coachman's astonished looks showed they hadn't expected such imposing walls and a formidable gate guarding the village. The first young woman to step out of the carriage was also taken aback by the imposing defensive structures. Hector surmised that she might be the daughter of the nobleman he had mentioned in his letter. Furthermore, it was noted that for a small village on the country's outskirts, this settlement possessed a remarkably impressive outer wall. It provided effective protection against attacks from monsters. A privileged young woman asked if Lord Hector built the wall. He explained that Boda was bordered by a dangerous forest, and without the wall's protection, monsters could attack and threaten the villagers at any time. For this very reason, constructing the outer wall became the settlement's top priority. The girl, captivated by Hector's story, wondered aloud if he was truly the local lord. as he appeared far too young for such a position. The actor affirmed that he was indeed the steward of the village and declared himself ready to answer any questions. Lillian gazed intently into the young lord's eyes, making it clear she had much on her mind. William realized that this very young man was the source of her beloved grandfather's anxiety. She recalled the words of Prime Minister Alfonso, who had urged her to exercise great caution even if she felt confident. Deep down, Lillian could not bear Jan's innocent facade. Hector, too, appeared as though he had nothing to do with the secret dealings surrounding the distribution of mithril. The Prime Minister's brave granddaughter set out to uncover the origin of the rare metal reserves. Escorted by Viscount Avan, she was gently told to introduce herself and be more courteous. Hector. Viscount Avan apologized for his daughter's lack of manners, explaining that the long journey had left the young girl rather fatigued. At once, Lillian adjusted her demeanor, becoming noticeably more polite and amiable. The actor said his village was unremarkable, but hoped Viscount Avan and his charming daughter would enjoy their stay. Avan thanked him and requested their safety, but just then, the guard reported monsters approaching. It soon became clear that the Diamond Wolves were rapidly approaching the settlement from the main road. Without hesitation, the young Lord Hector ordered the main gates to be shut and commanded everyone to prepare for a possible attack. Lillian watched intently as Hector ordered Captain Ed to defend the town and take command of the archers. Within moments, Captain Ed's booming voice rang out, commanding the Diamond Wolves to open fire. A deadly hail of arrows rained from the city walls, striking the monsters below as skilled archers fired with tireless precision, aiming to end the saga of the Diamond Wolves with this final, merciless assault. Meanwhile, Viscount Evans's carriage had already crossed the threshold of the main gates, which promptly closed behind it, creating an impenetrable barrier against the monsters. Viscount Avans thanked the young actor for his skillful help, which averted disaster, and admitted surprise at the well-coordinated guards, only to learn from the actor they were actually local hunters, not guards. The young lord said local hunters guarded the village from monsters. Captain Ed then reported the Diamond Wolves were wiped out, startling their guests. Louison noted Ed was heavily armed and armored for a hunter, piquing his interest. The girl immediately noticed that the hunter's entire gear was crafted from mithril, a rare material scarcely found even among the royal guard. Such armor struck her as highly unusual. Lillian apologized, noting that Boda likely lacked the funds for such costly gear, making it hard for Lord Hector. The young geomancer admired her insight, agreeing it was tough to obtain, but made possible by special agreements. Hector realized he had made a mistake. The hunter's armor was far too conspicuous. His only intention had been to fortify the village's defenses as much as possible, but in the end, he had gone too far. He introduced himself to the guests as the captain of a hunting expedition, impressing them with his sense of responsibility. Ed fully understood and decided to help Hector. The hunter's captain explained that only the most skilled and fearless warriors wore mithril armor, as the forests were filled with countless ferocious monsters. Lillian was speechless at Captain Ed's remark, so Hector changed the subject, suggesting the guests rest after their journey and visit the thermal springs, which they eagerly agreed to, asking to be taken there at once. Hector enjoyed skillfully distracting the guests and silently thanked Ed for his resourcefulness. Later, the cavalry and soldiers went to the hunter's garrison, while the guests remained at Hector's house. Julian and Viscount Avance were astonished by the sight of the hot spring, admitting that they could never have imagined such a dwelling. After all, was it not a marvel to be able to enjoy a hot bath beneath the open sky. They highly praised Hector for the improvements he had made to the house, and once again invited guests to visit the hot spring at any time, promising that fresh towels would soon be provided. Meanwhile, the young woman told guests they could lock the back door while bathing to avoid unexpected visitors, a method Hector invented to prevent sudden visits from Amada and the other adventurers. At that moment, Rin decided to prepare dinner and invited her guests to approach her with any questions they might have. Lillian and Avans were pleased by her hospitality and thanked the maid for her care. After an exhausting journey, Avans and Lillian were finally able to unwind completely in the hot springs. Awaiting them was a wonderful dinner, crafted from the freshest ingredients and prepared according to Rin's special recipe. As guests dined, the maid readied rooms where Lillian and Avans soon slept. The next morning, after breakfast, Ektar guided them through unexplored parts of the village. The guests admired Ektar's vast vegetable fields, explored paths between neat buildings, visited a shop run by a cat girl, then ended their day with hot baths, dinner, and finally went to bed. Suddenly recalling her real purpose, Lillian knew she couldn't just enjoy rural life. She was here to find the cause of the nitrile spread and now needed to share her initial investigation findings with her grandfather. Once again, Rince's flawless breakfast captured all of Lillian's attention as the Prime Minister's granddaughter deeply appreciated her skill, and Rince found great satisfaction in Lillian's praise. At breakfast, Amanda and her party told Hector they were going hunting. Curious about these unusual warriors, Lillian asked who they were, and Hector explained they were Strikewing, the village's only adventurers. Lillian was surprised to find only 5 adventurers in this monster-filled frontier, all likely elite veterans and the settlement's main defense, and was particularly struck that every one of them was a woman. Quite unexpectedly, the Prime Minister's granddaughter announced her intention to join the adventurers in their hunt for monsters, a declaration that left both Hector and the attack wing team genuinely astonished. Avan said a young woman of her status couldn't make such a request, and he'd never let Lillian do anything so dangerous. But Lillian stood firm and reassured her father that everything would be fine. The Prime Minister's granddaughter, a top School of Magic graduate specializing in water magic with strong freezing spells, assured him she could easily handle the monsters. Billy concluded that there was nothing remarkable left in the village except for the hunter's equipment. The high walls and hot springs no longer held any allure for him, and so it was time to explore the world beyond the village limits. For the curious girl, the prospect of joining an adventurer's party seemed like a magnificent escapade. However, the actor chose to intervene, seeking to temper her confidence just a little. Hector warned not to underestimate monsters, as real battles differ greatly from school lessons. But Lillian insisted she'd never give up, reminding him she always had 5 wonderful friends by her side for any adventure. The Prime Minister's granddaughter once again mentioned her advanced magical abilities, insisting that this was the most reliable thing in the world. Eka realized then that Lillian was just a child, unable to grasp what was being said to her. Edger thought Lillian had great potential for advanced magic, but tested his patience. Hoping she'd calm down after defeating a monster, he let her join a hunt, warned her of risks, and told her to stay close for safety. He assured Lillian's anxious father that he would not put her in harm's way, promising to keep her away from dangerous places. In return, Advents apologized for his daughter's behavior, admitting that at times her stubbornness defied all reason. To Ektar's surprise, Rin also chose to join the hunting expedition. Her explanation, that her skills in restorative magic might prove necessary, left a strong impression on him. Hector thanked Rin for her foresight and willingness to assist. Once preparations were complete, the band of courageous travelers, accompanied by the enchanting granddaughter of Prime Minister Lillian, set forth into the treacherous forest. As was their custom, scouting duties fell to Aurum, the nimble half-gnome. Aurum was urgently told to find the weakest demonic beasts for the squad. She vowed to do it, though she thought it tough work, babysitting an aristocrat's vain daughter who only wanted to indulge herself. After wandering the forest for some time, Aurum finally spotted a foul-smelling orc. Judging this creature to be an ideal specimen, he made a swift decision. Without hesitation, he hurled a stone with precise aim. While the troop enjoyed a peaceful stroll in Birdsong's dense forest, William, the Prime Minister's granddaughter, was entranced by its calm. But Amanda resented how nobility's presence made everyone drop their guard, as if all was safe. But soon, the calm gave way to unease. When Aura's cries rang out, the half-potter rushed swiftly toward her group, bringing urgent news of the approaching monsters. Aurum warned the squad of approaching 3 D-ranked magical orcs. Seconds later, massive, furious orcs appeared on the horizon, charging with astonishing speed, intent on getting revenge against the bold young woman who provoked them. The man, now among familiar surroundings, ordered his team to prepare for battle. But the Prime Minister's young granddaughter declared she'd handle it. The group hesitated at bold Vadia's claim, while Lillian prepared a freezing spell. With a few elegant movements of her hands, the Prime Minister's granddaughter tapped into the highest level of water magic. She summoned a powerful surge of hissing liquid and unleashed it directly at the enraged orcs. No sooner had the stream of water struck the 3 monstrous giants than a freezing spell was unleashed. Instantly, the orcs were transformed into gleaming blocks of ice, rendered harmless and posing no further threat. The young noblewoman, truly gifted with formidable magical powers, resolved to astonish her companions even further by unveiling new feats of magic. Using her exceptional magic, Lillian summoned a frigid wind that shattered the frozen orcs into sparkling fragments, leaving the adventurers and young Lord Hector awestruck at the incredible power she wielded. Lillian was thrilled. She had vanquished monsters for the first time in her life and finally proved her magical abilities in real combat. Hector admitted he had once thought her frivolous and fickle, but now realized how wrong he had been. In truth, Lillian revealed herself to be a true sorceress, defeating 3 ferocious orcs with a single spell. It now became clear why this gentle young woman had been so confident, insisting on venturing into the forest. Hector sincerely praised the young noblewoman for her outstanding work, saying they could now return and rest. But Lillian, thrilled by the hunt, was unready to leave the dangerous woods and showed no wish to abandon the excitement. The Prime Minister's granddaughter, declaring she was just getting started, urged them to keep hunting dangerous monsters. Any creature they met was instantly frozen by her powerful magic, each victory making her visibly delighted. During the journey through the forest, Lillian impressed everyone with her boundless magical energy. No one could keep track of how many times the young aristocrat employed her freezing magic, which unfailingly defeated any monsters they encountered. Lillian was ecstatic to defeat so many monsters, but their ease made her reckless, lost in her magic. Amanda warned that noise could attract stronger foes and urged retreat, supported by Aurum, as Hector warned of an approaching demonic beast. Fiery Lillian insisted retreat was not in her vocabulary. She would face any monster. Named top student at the famed School of Magic for her power, she was far tougher than Hector and his companions had expected. The Prime Minister's brave granddaughter Lillian, rushed at the towering B-rank trolls, determined to use her magic to stop even one and prove her full potential by seizing this opportunity without hesitation. Once again, the Necabirian rogue mage attempted to freeze his opponent with magic, but this time his plans fell apart. The giant troll effortlessly deflected the powerful stream of ice, striking it aside with his formidable hand. Lillian could hardly believe the monster had defended itself before she could freeze it. For the first time, her magic failed, and the once confident aristocrat panicked as the enraged troll charged straight at her. Luckily for Lillian, brave, half-giant Nora arrived just in time, blocking the vicious troll's overwhelming assault with her shield and ordering the young aristocrat to flee from the massive B-class monster. The best warriors rushed to help. Amanda's swift sword strikes left the trolls defenseless, while Sifa's precise, sharp arrows dealt heavy damage. Thanks to these adventurers, Lillian was safe. The battle, though fierce, was brief. The extraordinary mithril weapons allowed even colossal monsters like trolls to lose limbs with a single blow. The sorceress decided to finish the battle with a final blow, unleashing her strongest fire magic in a massive explosion that sent all the travelers fleeing desperately from the roaring fireball's epicenter. Once they had reached a safe distance, the actor asked Lillian if she was all right, noticing how shaken and frightened she appeared. The Prime Minister's granddaughter, still catching her breath, assured him that she was fine. Lillian apologized to Rin for causing trouble and thanked her for the rescue. Rin told her to calm down and offered healing magic. Ektar also regained composure and was relieved no lives were lost. Suddenly, something unexpected happened. Anxious and distracted, Lillian stepped carelessly near a steep drop. While such heedlessness was normal for a child, this time it was dangerous. Ektar was too far. Rin, closer, leapt to save her. The girls rushed down with frantic speed, and for the actor, this became the greatest ordeal of his life. In that dreadful moment, he felt utterly powerless. Upon noticing what had happened to Lillian and Rin, she immediately rushed to their aid, calling upon her power of levitation. The half-elves' assistance arrived just in time, for as the girls were plunging into the abyss, a powerful gust of air swept around them, slowing their fall. Lillian felt the wind's magic and knew salvation was near. Her companion thanked Cypher for intervening, but the half-elf explained she could only slow their fall. They'd still need a manual rescue, not a return to the summit. Meanwhile, Aurum was confronted with a new problem and hurried to share it with the young lord. Hector, already weary from the day's ordeals, anxiously awaited yet another threat. It turned out that the girls were gliding gently down onto tall trees, thick with foliage, and the Aromi warned them that they might get stuck among the branches. Events unfolded exactly as Aurum had predicted. Lillian landed with a jarring thud on the thick branches of the trees. Yet she found herself grateful that thanks to Safer's magic, she had narrowly escaped a mortal blow. After taking a brief rest, the young aristocrat realized she was perched atop a massive tree, towering at least 10 meters above the ground. Now, she needed to find a way to descend safely. She decided that all she needed to do was climb down the branches and trunk. However, this proved more difficult than she had anticipated. And at that very moment, Rin called out to Lillian. Startled, she gestured for the self-assured aristocrat to keep quiet. Yet Lillian, unable to grasp what was happening, watched in confusion as Rin's face grew visibly anxious. Lillian took a moment to grasp the situation. Before her loomed the enormous head of a fearsome cyclops, its single unblinking eye fixed on her, sending a wave of true terror through the young aristocrat. Panic swept over Rin, but Hector rushed to help. With little time, the young lord leapt down, calling on Sifar to aid him by using levitation magic. No sooner had Hector touched the ground than he was prepared to rush to Liliana's rescue and confront the Cyclops. Yet the creature was quicker. He had already seized the young woman and held her tightly in his powerful grasp. A frightened noblewoman attempted to wield freezing magic, but the giant Cyclops seemed utterly unfazed by her assault. He only tightened his grip until the chilling crack of her bones echoed through the air. At that moment, Hector hurled himself at the ferocious monsters, desperate to inflict harm upon the menacing Cyclops. The force of the adamantine blade was enough to sever the giant monster's arm, greatly diminishing the Cyclops' ability to resist. Sephir's levitation safely lowered Rin from the tree. Though unhurt, she was shaken. Hector emphasized the danger and urged them to leave, while the young lord requested restorative magic for Liliana. Liliana lay unconscious, and Rin hurried to assist her, but Sifar ordered the maid to stay back. The half-elf assured them that she would tend to Liliana herself and set about trying to revive the noble woman. Meanwhile, little Orim resolved to halt the fearsome Cyclops by calling upon the magic of earth, summoning a massive stone into the air. A massive boulder crashed into the Cyclops with a thunderous roar, yet the creature managed to deflect the worst of the impact. Seizing upon its confusion, Amanda and Nora joined the battle, determined to take advantage of the monster's distraction. The Cyclops was stunned by the coordinated assault of several adventurers. Swift, precise sword strikes alternated with the heavy blows of hurled stones, while Nora tirelessly reinforced the attack with her steadfast shield, strength, and mithril swords. The renowned adventurer Amanda managed to sever the leg of a massive Cyclops, rendering the creature unable to move. Though the monster had been defeated, it remained a threat, still dangerous and capable of attacking Nora. The strongest blow struck the shield, yet Amanda could not shake her concern for her companion. For a brief moment, Amanda let her guard down and failed to notice the massive stone hurled toward her by the Cyclops. A massive boulder crashed down with a thunderous roar upon the astonished and valiant Hector. Meanwhile, the sorceress Dorina wasted no time. She unleashed her explosive fire magic, sending a deadly blaze hurtling toward the Cyclops. Yet, as soon as the flames subsided, terror gripped everyone. The fire had not harmed the beast at all. Instead, it had only enraged it further. Although the Cyclops had lost a great deal of blood, he remained a fearsome adversary. No one could imagine how to halt this savage beast, for every possible means had already been tried. The director immediately ordered everyone to disperse, for a massive Cyclops was preparing to attack. The crew reacted at once, and the creature's powerful blow crashed down upon the ground. Orim attacked swiftly, slashing the Cyclops repeatedly with a razor-sharp dagger. He even leapt to its neck, leaving a vivid crimson scar across the creature's massive body. When she unleashed her wind blade skill, razor-sharp discs sliced into the Cyclops' body within seconds. Using earth magic to form handholds, Hector climbed as high as possible and delivered a series of devastating blows to the creature. He felt how effortlessly he severed the monster's left arm, as if it were the simplest of tasks. It was all thanks to the exceptional sword gifted to him by Master Donovan. In this battle, Hector truly came to appreciate the incomparable power of the adamantine blade, and he felt a surge of gratitude for possessing such a weapon. In a rage, the Cyclops attacked the young lord, but the effector's blades instantly severed his only hand's fingers. Hector lost balance and fell, yet with Sifar's help and his levitation, he landed gracefully. The travelers admitted that their plan was to distract the Cyclops, giving Hector the opportunity to strike a decisive blow at its vulnerable spot. The young lord was captivated by the plan and resolved to strike straight at the Cyclops' throat. Yet before he acted, the adventurers launched a coordinated assault to restrain their already wounded foe. After the mage's door hurled a fireball toward the Cyclops, the adventurer signaled to Hector, urging him to take action. Amanda suddenly emerged from beneath the stones, furious. She declared the cursed Cyclops her top enemy and vowed to destroy him herself, looking so fierce, like a demon, that she even scared her own team. When Amanda appeared, the actor felt renewed strength and urged a united attack to finally defeat the Cyclops. The adventurers eagerly joined, rejoicing at both the reunion and the long-awaited chance to slay the monster. Filled with determination and anger, he hurled himself at the Cyclops with no regard for his own safety, utterly resolved to destroy the creature completely. Lillian remained unconscious, but Rin managed to revive her with restoration magic. He asked how she was feeling. The young aristocrat, still weak, inquired how long she had been unconscious. Liliana realized she had missed the most remarkable part. Only now, seeing the slain Cyclops' colossal majestic body, did she grasp how enormous it was, and the true danger she had narrowly escaped. Lillian was relieved that the adventurers had managed to defeat the dangerous creature. The actor then inquired whether the noble lady now understood just how perilous the monsters in the forest near his village truly were. Lillian saw how formidable the Cyclops was. Even united, the travelers faced grave danger, as even seasoned professionals had barely defeated it. She realized the forest's peril must not be underestimated. Liliana realized that she had set herself impossible goals, for she knew only a handful of offensive spells. Now everything became clear to her. These lands were not the kind of place where one could wander without a care. The anxious noblewoman apologized to all the adventurers and the two companions. Hector acknowledged sincerely that she truly regretted her reckless behavior. The actor told the young woman not to be upset, praising her honesty in admitting her mistake and assuring her that escaping serious injury was what mattered most, since things could have ended far worse. The young lord remarked that remaining in the forest was becoming dangerous, emphasizing the need to return to the village. Rin offered her assistance to Lillian, and the girl gratefully accepted, as she was feeling pain in her leg. Doran wondered if they should take Cyclops' valuable body, but Hector said it was wiser to hurry back to the village. The demons would handle the body, so the travelers eagerly returned, dreaming of a hot bath. Meanwhile, the anxious Viscount Avans could find no peace in the village. A considerable amount of time had already passed since the adventurers had departed on their hunt. Naturally, he was deeply worried for his beloved daughter. At last, Liliana returned and told her father all that happened in the forest, thanking Hector for his rescue. But the young Lord of Bokta insisted he was no savior. He was simply doing his duty as her escort. Viscount Avance reminded Lillian to share important news with Hector. Agitated, she revealed she was not only Avance's daughter, but also the Prime Minister's granddaughter, shocking Hector and the other travelers. The girl burst into tears, comforted by Avan. Hector, realizing he'd learned much from the truth and caught the royal family's eye, reflected as Rin cared for Amanda. That evening, they all enjoyed relaxing, hot baths after dinner. The realization that Liliana was the granddaughter of Prime Minister Alfonso Grenville continued to unsettle the actor. The young lord wondered why the girl was in his remote village, guessing she might be investigating its success. Liliana explained that mithril, a rare material, had recently started spreading in the royal capital. Her grandfather had tracked all metal routes to Boda village, forcing her to hide her identity for a secret probe. She was shocked to find the supposedly abandoned village restored and surrounded by towering walls. The noble lady admitted she was impressed by the village's hunters, all armed with sturdy mithril weapons. As a researcher, she sought the mysterious mithril source, but failed to discover it. Hector vividly recalled how, during the monster hunt, they nearly found the underground tunnels, but narrowly avoided danger thanks to Rin, who distracted the noble lady just in time for the team to change course. After Lillian finished her story, Hector asked her to share more detailed information about the tale of the metal. The young noblewoman confessed that after being rescued from the Cyclops, she had longed to invite Hector to speak with her in person. Lillian also assured that she would avoid any circumstances that might bring harm to the remarkable village. Liliana swore to keep the secret and asked Hector to reveal all he knew about the covert mithril distribution. Catching him off guard, since he'd hoped to learn more himself, but now found himself being questioned instead. Liliana said her grandfather, the Prime Minister, knew of the village's secret dealings and sent her to investigate. Hector realized officials were aware, so they urgently had to limit mithril sales and reduce supplies to the traitor, Albedo. Avan boasted of marrying the Prime Minister's sixth daughter and having an estate as strong as his father-in-law's, yet chose to befriend Ecto and the village boat, which Ecto welcomed, hoping it would connect him to the Prime Minister. Hector chose to trust Avan and Lillian, promising full disclosure. Meanwhile, in the dangerous forest, crows fled the Cyclops' corpse as a fearsome winged monster appeared, briefly casting a dragon's shadow overhead. Afterward, the dreadful dragon turned his attention to the massive carcass of the dead Cyclops. Then, using his magical power, he absorbed it entirely. After absorbing the dragon's power, he felt a surge of newfound energy and wisdom coursing through him. Soon, his gaze shifted toward the nearby village of Boda. With powerful beats of its wings, the dragon gained speed, its fierce gaze fixed upon the village. The fire-breathing beast posed a terrible threat, capable of inflicting irreparable harm on the inhabitants.